Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time, back with his good friend, Mr. Greg Dickerson. How you doing, sir?
Doing great, Michael. Good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. So something I don't think you and I have ever talked about, which again is three guys have talked for 3 years now. That's hard to do. So I think I found one. You ready?
hmm
We spend a lot of time talking about the U.S. economy, housing market, U.S. consumers, builders, real estates, all of that. Let's flip the script and talk about rest of world. And when I talk about rest of world, do you think about it? Do you watch it? Do you see what's going on? China, Europe, Canada? Does any of that hit your radar? Do you look for contagion? Talk to me about how you look at rest of world and what do you think's going on right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a global macro investor. So what that means is I look at the global macroeconomic environment to make my investment decisions, whether it's in real estate locally, whether it's in stocks, crypto, whatever it is, because that environment affects liquidity, the cost of borrowing, and the liquidity in the markets as a whole. So you have to watch all of them, especially if you're in the markets. Real estate's more local, but the financing is what drives, and interest rates is what drives values in real estate as well as opportunities and demand. So you got to look at that. And we have touched on it a little bit with the pandemic and with the war in Ukraine and things like that. And we've all seen the effects of globalization on your local economy, at your home, in your neighborhood, on your street, with your ability to get goods and services, with what those goods and services cost you. Fuel, that's the biggest one, is energy. And we've seen the shift in policy coming out of DC due to energy and the energy problems. The biggest risks out there right now, obviously, are China's very unstable. Their economy is unstable. Their leadership's extremely unstable with what they're trying to do with Taiwan and their global ambitions. Obviously, Russia is a wild card as well. Big global ambitions there. Ukraine's not their only thing that they want. And then you have North Korea. So you have those types of risks out there and things that you have to watch that could absolutely affect markets, financial markets, things like that. And what's more interesting, a lot of people don't realize, is how much the rest of the world depends on and is affected by what the Fed does here, because we're the largest central bank in the world. We basically set policy globally. So most of the central banks, they talk to each other, they're connected, but they're all doing different things. China's dropped rates twice now in the last couple of weeks, because they've got serious problems there. Their economy's on the brink of collapse, largely due to their COVID policy, their zero COVID policy, and locking down and just stopping trade. Now, because of what they're trying to do with Taiwan and their war policy, I guess, if you want to call it, or whatever you want to call that. And then when you start looking at Europe, energy is the biggest issue there. And we've been talking about this for months. We haven't seen in this country or globally the real effects of the energy situation due to the war in Ukraine until we get into the fall and winter, and the energy prices will shoot through the roof for everybody. And that's going to be in this country as well, which, by the way, could drive gas prices again. If oil and things go up because of demand as we get into the colder season, that could drive gas prices back up. So enjoy these gas prices now. There's no guarantees they're going to stay like this as we get into the fall and winter months.
Yeah. Because again, I look at the world as well, because again, it's kind of all connected. Right. It's all connected. When I kind of break down the rest of the world, China is obviously my number one focus. I've been talking about it on my channel for 9 months now. They've essentially, they have shot themselves in the foot, reloaded the gun and shot themselves in the foot again. It's amazing to watch. And essentially what I think they've done is they've destroyed consumer confidence, destroyed it, right? They took out tech, they took out education, they took out housing. Then zero COVID. I mean, people don't know what's going on. So when you scare the population, they all retreat. This is a natural human condition. It's not. This could be in China, in New York, in Brazil. If the government scares their people, they retreat. They don't spend. They save. They miser. That's what's happening.
That's why inflation is so dangerous and so critical. The Arab Spring, everybody remembers the Arab Spring several years ago. That started over food,
bread. Yeah.
Right. They couldn't get bread. So they rose up, and the world watched and they saw that. And that's where it starts. When you have inflation out of control, people can't feed their kids. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Democracy in this country is one thing, and it's a top issue, threats to democracy. But when you can't feed your kids, that becomes number one. Nothing else matters. Nobody's going to be talking about abortion or any of this other stuff. They're going to be talking about, I need to feed my kids. And that's when people start marching in the streets and, demonstrating, and you see serious civil unrest. That's why a lot of people are they're underestimating what the Fed has to do. They have no choice, because they know what'll happen if inflation gets to 10, 12%,
Oh,
which it probably really is. Most
oh,
of us already know.
oh,
The
for
only
sure.
thing down is gas prices. That's when you see serious unrest. And a lot of times that can start around the world. And then when you see countries collapsing and going into bankruptcy, like we saw with Greece and things like that,
Yeah.
that rattles financial markets around the world, which rattles credit markets around the world, which rattles everybody's local economy.
Yeah. Yeah. And then kind of so once I look at China and I realize what's going on there, then I kind of walk over to Europe, and I think Europe's in a recession already. I just saw a report this morning that the UK is expecting 18% published inflation this winter because of fuel and food. Just not good. There's very little going on good in Europe. And then we go to Canada, our brothers to the north, brothers and sisters to the north. They have their housing market makes our housing market look dirt cheap, right? They're like 4x our affordability. And then you layer on top of that, I don't know if you know this, they don't have 30-year mortgages. They have 5-year ARMs, and they have these things called trigger rates, and they're in for a world of pain in the housing market. And then, then you come back to North America, and it's like, we could have a worldwide recession. I look back over the last 100 years, we've had 2 worldwide recession depressions. And I think we're on the cusp of one that could start as soon as this quarter, or get going by Q1 of next year. It could be a worldwide thing. What do you think?
Yeah, and 2008 was too. That was a global
That was
systemic
one of the
risk
two. Yeah.
that happened. And I mean, that's just where we are. So all of our economies are joined at the hip to a degree with global trade and reliance upon each other. And, to your point about mortgages, I mean, Europe's talking about 50-year mortgages.
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, it's incredible. And that just does nothing but continue to inflate. So they're doing the opposite of what they need to be doing. And same thing with this country. I mean, I was reading the other day that they're talking about stimulus again. Certain states are going to start people are going to receive stimulus checks.
Yeah.
There's already things like that going on in California with rent subsidies and things like that, gas subsidies, stuff like that. I mean, that doesn't help inflation. That keeps it going. And it's a very tricky, difficult time in the way this needs to be fixed. And we're kind of walking a very thin line. You're going to hear a lot more about this Goldilocks concept right now with policy, with central bank policy, Fed policy around the world, because it's got to be not too hot, not too cold. It's got to be just right in order to balance all this. And really what you got to do, China makes zero sense. They've got to get back open. They've got to get the supply chains open back up and get trade going again.
Yeah.
And they got to stop this warmongering and, geopolitical threats and things like that. And just build your economy, man. What's really funny is, you and I have been talking about years where several people said the yuan is going to be the next reserve currency. Like, there's absolutely no way.
No way. No chance.
Yeah. I mean, that's like saying the ruble is going to be.
Yeah, no chance.
Yeah. I mean, it's just not going to happen. I mean, China's a large economy. Yeah. But when you're doing what what Xi is doing, you cannot be a world leader. You cannot be a global superpower that's going to lead the world. It just ain't going to happen.
Not going to happen. Yeah.
And we're seeing the results of that in real time, and where it goes next. Once he wins that election again, there's no stopping that guy and his ambitions. And we know what his ambitions are. He wants to be the greatest emperor that country has ever seen, and he wants to bring it all back. I don't think he's going to stop at anything to make that happen. Although I think he's smarter than Putin. I think he's more calculating than Putin, but I think he's just as disillusional or delusional, new word, just as delusional as Putin. Putin is totally delusional, maybe a little crazy, obviously crazy. They don't do what you're doing. You just don't do that unless you're nuts. And I don't think Xi is nuts, but I think he's delusional, and I think he's underestimating his people to rise up against him.
That's where I think it's at. I think his ambitions have, because again, my wife's family's from Taiwan. I've been to Taiwan many times, been to China many times. I think he's underestimated some of his policies, and the fact that they cut rates twice in 8 days, that's a sign of just how bad it is over there. Their real estate market. You actually have Chinese citizens not paying mortgages in mass. That is not a normal behavior. You have tanks in front of banks for bank runs. Not normal behavior. The world is watching, and the world's like, we don't like what we see. So
it's crazy times. And, none of this is doom and gloom. This is all, when you think about global macro environment of investing, these are the things you have to look at, and you have to weigh the potential risk. What if China goes to war? What does that do? What if Russia escalates? What does that do? What if they team up? And then you got North Korea, all these things kind of happening. So you have to think about these things when you're trying to grow your wealth and protect it, and where you want to position yourself in the different plays. And especially if you're looking at emerging markets and things like that, and you're into that, that's a whole nother deal. Energy markets, that's a global thing. So, if you're in those areas of the market and the industry, you got to look at that. And then back to Main Street here in the United States, in your street, city, whatever, you can see the effects all these things are having on your own personal experience of daily living. And so the average person doesn't really need to pay attention to it, but it's definitely going to affect you.
Yeah. This is a lot of fun, Greg. I appreciate talking to you every week. Tell us one more time where they can find you.
Yeah, GregDickerson.com. Everything's there. Go check it out.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you.